You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hey, okay, so today we are going to be finishing up a series about the 7 clues that you're ready to leave your relationship when you love someone struggling with addiction. Now, we went over the last 2 podcasts. We went over the first, 5 reasons. So let's cover those really quickly. Number 1, you're afraid they will shame you for leaving. Number 2, you're staying because you're scared of being alone. Number 3, you don't see signs of things ever changing. Number 4, you're afraid they will get better after you leave. And number 5, you don't feel important, cherished, appreciated, or loved. So today we're going to be covering number 6 and number 7. And I'm not going to lie, this is a bit of a heavy podcast, so I'm going to try and keep it short because the heavier ones, let's keep it short and sweet, to the point, okay? So number 6, is very important, and one of the primary reasons why you should consider leaving your relationship is because you are in an abusive relationship. Now, we've gone over in this podcast all the different signs of abuse, and in the show notes, I'm going to put a link to an incredible resource that will go into much more detail than I am today, that is written by experts in abuse, which I am not. And so I always think we should learn from the best people, and I am not the best person to help you understand what abuse is. But I am going to say there are many different types of abuse. And one of the most important things my therapist did with me when I was in love with a man struggling with addiction is help me understand the cycle of abuse and all the different types of abuse, because I was in an abusive relationship and didn't even know it. Typically, those of us that are not familiar with all the types of abuse think of abuse as a very violent relationship, right? Where there is a lot of physical abuse going on. And although that is true for some of us, and it wasn't towards the end of my marriage when I actually tried to leave that it got physical, there are other types of abuse as well. There's financial abuse, which I was in that type of a relationship. I did not have access to all of our credit cards or all of our bank statements. I was given a specific allowance per week. So for me, it was $100 a week to feed a family of 5. And then when I came back from the grocery store, my receipt, he used to go through my receipt and check all of the items and question things that I had purchased. Like, why did I purchase a gallon of milk when a quart of milk would have been enough? That is financial abuse. He would take our money and invested in the stock market and had a gambling issue where he overextended us without me even knowing. I was sitting on a couch watching our child one day and got a call from a broker from a financial institution saying we owed $74,000 because my husband had borrowed it. I had no idea about that. So there are a variety of ways that you can be in a relationship with financial abuse. There's verbal abuse, which is, gaslighting. So convincing you that the issue is really your fault or the way you remember it didn't really happen that way. There is name calling. There's shaming you. There's degrading you and belittling you and embarrassing you in front of public or privately. There's sexual abuse, where you are in a relationship with somebody and, you might be in a committed relationship, but they're manipulating you to do sexual acts with when you don't want to, putting pressure on you, or threatening you, saying, if you don't do this for me, I'll find it from another woman or man. There's manipulative acts. There's sexual acts. So there's that kind of abuse. So we've covered verbal, financial, sexual, physical, and there's many others that I really encourage you to Google this. Now, cycles of abuse, we did a whole episode on this, so I won't go into too much detail here, but basically, a lot of people think that abuse is, to be an abusive relationship means there's abuse happening all the time, 24 hours, and all you ever get for them is abuse. But the secret is actually people that are abusers can be very kind and very charming and very manipulative in certain periods of time. And their kindness and manipulation serves the purpose to keep you in the relationship so they can keep abusing you. So, for example, let's say you are having a wonderful moment with them and you have a moment where you fall madly in love with them all over again, right? And you think, God, this is the best person ever, when they're sober, when they're kind. And then you think everything is great, and you let your guard down and you start to trust again, and then something happens to trigger them, and they verbally or sexually or physically assault you, right? They abuse you in some way, and you're devastated, you're heartbroken, you're shattered into a million pieces, and then afterwards you are walking on eggshells because you know that they're unpredictable and you don't know when their next time they're going to lash out is. And they are keeping you there by typically saying, I'm so sorry, I don't know what happened, I apologize, that wasn't really me, you don't deserve that. They make this big apology to keep you there. And then they woo you back, right? This romance period starts where they start to put you at the center of their life. They tell you everything you want to hear. Maybe they buy you presents, or they promise you a trip, or they show up for the kids and do the right thing. And then you start to trust them again, and you have this moment of, I love you. Oh my gosh, that was the last time. This is going to work. It's going to be great. He really promised, or she really promised this time. And then there's a trigger and they lash out. Do you see how it's cyclical? It's a cycle of abuse. That's why it happens, because it goes over and over again. So when you think, oh, Michelle, there's no way I'm being abused, ask yourself about the last time there was conflict in your relationship and why. And really dive in deep into learning about abuse and see if you are in an abusive relationship. Because if you are, that is a great time to entertain the possibility of leaving this relationship. You're never going to hear from me that you should leave, because A, that's not helpful. It's not helpful for anyone to just say, you should go, because that sounds like we're being judged, by somebody who's sitting there thinking they know what's best for us. And we feel slightly embarrassed that we are in this relationship with them still, and that we still love them. So you're not going to hear me tell you that you should for certain leave. I just want you to ask yourself the question about what would it look like if you were to leave, right? What would you do differently? What would your life feel like? Where would you go? Start Googling for answers of places you'd like to live, or where would your kids go to school, or who in your family or friends can help you. Are there government resources that you might need to rely on to get you through a specific period? And then lastly, the seventh clue that you are ready to consider the idea of leaving your relationship is if you have children and your children are witnessing dysfunction and being exposed to trauma. As you know, and I've shared before, I had 3 very young children with my ex-husband, and it was not lost on me what they were being exposed to on a regular basis. There was knockdown, drag-out fights. There was one moment in time where he took tape, the packing tape, it's like silver thick tape, like Gorilla Tape, and taped my hands and my legs together and put tape over my mouth. And my kids came over to me as I was taped up on the couch and wanted to know what was wrong and what kind of game we were playing. And of course, as their mom, I didn't want to scare them and I couldn't talk. But once I was finally freed, I said, oh yeah, it was a game, because I didn't want them to worry. There were many times where I had to call the police. There was trauma and there was dysfunction very, very much going on under our home. There were also very good times. There was also laughter. There was also love. I know you guys get it. It sounds crazy but it's true. And I know a lot of people on the outside would look at, if they knew what was going on inside my house, they would judge me for staying. And they would probably judge me for keeping my kids there and witnessing what they saw and what they still to this very day remember. And my oldest is 21. But here's the truth, is that I think my children are incredibly grateful that I left. In fact, I know it. They thank me all the time for leaving and for providing them a safe place. Even when I left, I immediately left. And, I was a single mom and life was really difficult. They still loved the idea that I could tuck them into bed and they wouldn't hear screaming downstairs, that the police would not be showing up on their doorstep, that they didn't have to hear the clinking of bottles, the slurring of words, the nosebleeds, the passed out dad, the dad that promised them to show up that never did. My kids were always so grateful I left. And it doesn't mean they hated their dad. They didn't. Because even last night at dinner, my daughter, who's home from college, said to me, Mom, you did a great job of never talking badly about him. And I didn't. What I did do was state the facts. I was never trying to pin my children against their father because that would hurt my kids. So I never tried to get them to hate him at all. And I trusted that one day they would understand what was really going on and they would get it. I knew that. I knew that they would figure it out eventually. But in the meantime, my job as their mom was to just explain things to them to keep them safe. So when I did finally have the courage to leave, and I had the courage to leave that one day, it was a day. It finally came. There was a moment in time where I said, that's it. I don't have any resources at all. I'm broke. I'm scared. I have no friends. My family has no idea, but I gotta go. And so when I finally came to that decision, it was because of my children. I was being a mama bear. And I thought to myself, if you can mess with me all you want to, but you can't keep messing with my kids. And so it was because of my children that I decided to go. And it was the best decision I ever made. Now, again, I'm sharing my stories with you. This is my personal situation. It's not applicable to everyone. And I don't think there's enough people out there talking about this and sharing their situations, particularly from the standpoint of the loved one, not the addicted. So you take what you want from this. And remember, there is absolutely zero judgment in this community. So please know that whether you decide to stay or whether you decide to leave, it is entirely your choice. And lastly, I just want to remind you that you reserve the right to change your mind at any point in time. You always reserve the right to change your mind. Do you know how many times over the 10 years I was with somebody struggling with addiction that I decided to stay and then decided to leave and then decided to stay and then I was going to leave? Hundreds, if not thousands. And that's okay. We don't need to beat ourselves up. Loving someone that struggles with this disease is so complicated and so painful and so heavy that we need to offer ourselves the grace and the kindness and the compassion that we offer everyone else in this world. We need to extend that to ourselves first. You're under pressure. You're under great strain. You're accomplishing a feat every day. There's no break for you. So let's give ourselves a little encouragement and say, if today you decide that you want to go, go. And if tomorrow you wake up and you decide to stay, then stay. You do whatever you think is best for you at that moment. And you always reserve the right to change your mind, because I am behind you 110%. And if you need any more help at all, if you're like, Michelle, listen, love ya, but I got to go deeper than this podcast. Great. I've got you covered. That's why we offer the Stay or Go program. It's pretty intense. It's a long program. I'm not going to lie. You can always start it and then put it aside for later if you want to. You can find it at loveoveraddiction.com. And if you don't have the financial means to be able to purchase it, I want you to write us and we will give it to you for free, because we love you and because we want everyone to have access to the help that they deserve, regardless of their financial situation. Okay? I'm here for you. I really mean it. And I'll talk to you next week. This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with my personal thoughts and beliefs. We are bonded together by the fact that we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.